and authority building, which is what I was doing through SEO, establish themselves locally as their authority.
Hey everyone, welcome into The Authority Matters. I am your host, Mike Leon. This is a monthly series from the Legal Podcast Network where we help founders and leaders build trust and authority online. We're going to show you the exact steps to build a complete marketing ecosystem instead of just posting content and hoping that it works. I know you all do that out there because when you build a real system around your ideas, credibility compounds over time. I'm here with Dennis, aka DM Meador, founder of the Legal Podcast Network. He's also affectionately known as the Bandman in this new animated podcast series, Building Authority Through Media. And in this episode of The Authority Matters, we're going to talk about founder-led media and personal branding, what it is, why it matters, and how to do it without turning into an influencer. Those influencers, they're so annoying. Dennis, it's good to see you. Look, let me ask you here at this onset that people I know, they don't trust logos like they used to. They start trusting individuals. They trust people. When you say the term founder-led media, what do you mean by it? Like, what's the real purpose of it? Is it credibility, leverage, leadership? Like, what's the frame?
I mean, I think it's all of those, and I think it's only some of those for some people. When you talk about founder-led media, you talk about founder-led marketing, what it really is the one who is, whatever C-suite that they're in, founder position that they're in, they are the ones taking ownership for the message, which if you think about it, ultimately, these are the people that created the initial message. So why not be the person who is going out and articulating that message to the world instead of getting it second, third, fourth, fifth hand? You have somebody come in, they sit down, they do this branding, and then they do this and they do that, and this agency comes in and then they filter it, and then by the time you actually get what you get the original message, it's nowhere near what it originally was. I like to think about the old game of telephone. You're sitting in the circle, maybe it's, around a fire or some sort of youth activity, and the first person says in the person's ear a sentence that can kind of be skewed a little bit. Our company is really going to serve people. And then the next person says, our company is really going to swerve people. And then the next person says, our Junkany is going to swerve meeples. And by the time it gets all the way around the circle, the original statement is nowhere near what actually happened. And so to me, founder-led marketing is an opportunity to stop playing the phone game with the message of the company and allow the very person who had the original vision, who people have bought into their vision in joining them in the company, stepping out and saying, here's who we are, here's what we stand for, here's who I am leading this group of tremendous people. That to me is what founder-led media is all about and what its main purpose really serves.
Founder-led media, it really matters right now, but I'm curious as well, why does it matter so much? Like what changed in the attention and trust? How does it also change the way buyers are starting to make decisions before they even get to talk to you?
Well, think about what's happened over just these past 4 or 5 generations. So I'm X, then we had millennial, then we have Z, now we have alpha coming up. And I remember as a young person watching things on the news where like these big, huge corporations that, our parents and grandparents were telling us, go to school, get a good job, trust in this company, and they'll take care of you for the rest of your life. And then you see these people coming out and standing on a sidewalk with boxes of their, pictures of their wife and their kids and a plant and bawling and saying, I've given 30 years of my life and now it's all completely disappeared. So Gen X, we grew up on seeing that sort of thing. And then millennials came into this next generation, and they're digital, and they're being told you can be who you want to be, you can do what you want to do, you don't have to fit in, you're unique, you're your own person. And I'm not saying any of that is or isn't true. I would tend to believe it is true, but they're being told another message, which is don't trust the big companies. So initially we thought, ooh, be careful with the big companies. Then they were being told, you know what? You don't need the big companies. And now Gen Z is being, seeing and looking around them, and they're saying, I don't trust the companies and the institutions. So just putting a flashy logo and a quippy, slogan out there anymore, it really puts your company in a position where people are already going to hold you at an arm's length, hold you back from trusting you. So, what's begun happening through the leadership of some people, and we could name 4 or 5 of them, but from some people who've been willing to step out from behind their logo and say, okay, I get it, I get it, I get it. Companies are scary. They're monoliths. People make decisions based on, spreadsheets and not on people's lives. But I want to tell you about me and my vision and my company and what we believe and what we're doing and how we're going to help. And so the dynamic of the desire for people to connect to a company has completely changed. We've gone from, you know, collecting, little logos and keepsakes and having affinities for companies, to now we have affinities for people that we connect to digitally. And I think that that's why it's created such an atmosphere for a need for founder led marketing, founder led media, is because people want to connect with the brands, and they no longer connect with logos, slogans, funny little, characters, or even, celebrity endorsements. They want real people that make real mistakes, that are out there fighting, living, breathing, and doing everything that they're doing. And so that's why I think it's so important for companies, big or small, to step out and just say, hey, if you're doing business with this company, you're doing business with me or some sort of extension of me and who I am and what I've set up.
Those people always leaving those offices always have a plant in that box, Dennis. It's very well said. Look, I've heard you say this before. You say that buyers don't want to be sold, they want to verify. What does that look like? What does that verification look like in this founder-led media world? And how does media kind of shorten the trust curve before that first convo?
Well, I think it's a process. I think, whereas before, most purchases in the past were done in the moment. So, like, media was all about consume, 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 buy now, buy now, buy now. And I think as a whole, societally, and even in, American society, we've seen through that, and we've seen the emptiness of it. The generations that have come, the millennials, Z, alpha, they've seen the vanity of living for the LV purse, or, the this brand that, and this car brand this, and they've kind of seen through that. And now here they are in a position where it's like, okay, I want to make a purchase, but there's a billion options out there. So, how do I, in a day and age where I could just punch in blue shoes, 1.7 billion results? Okay. Blue shoes for hiking, 1.2 billion results. Okay. Blue shoes for hiking that help me be a little taller because I'm only 5'3" and I want to be 5'6". Oh, we're all the way down to 300,000 results. But that's become the process of selling versus, oh, hi, my name is DM. I sell blue shoes. I really love blue shoes. I've had red shoes, I've had green shoes, but the only shoes that really work for me are blue shoes. So I built a company around the concept of blue shoes. And the blue shoes that I build are very specifically designed for people who want to go hiking. They're very specifically designed. We even have a model that will, put a little bit of lift and lift you up about 3 inches if you'd like. Now, you tell me which of those buying experiences feels more comfortable and feels more tailored to you.
No, I agree. Look, I did want to ask you because I've also, maybe, I think I've heard you say this: lead with your face, not your logo. We've just been talking about that the face is more prominent now. Why does founder visibility kind of reduce the risk for the buyer? And What's the simplest way for someone to kind of start showing up without overcomplicating it or overthinking it?
So, two parts. Why, number one, is it easier to buy from a face? Or why does it shorten the buying cycle? Because we crave humanity. We are three generations, or at least conservatively 2.5 generations into personally, emotionally, socially identifying with screens. We have friends that are our closest friends that we've literally never met in our entire life face to face. And yet we feel more of an emotional connection to that person than our next door neighbor, or even maybe our cousin that we see at Christmas and Easter and, family reunions. And so, because we're craving connection and we're accustomed to connection through a digital format, by being a founder who's not afraid to hide behind a logo and to step out, we give buyers the chance to say, oh, that's a real person, a real company, something I can trust, something I can connect to. They're a little funny, they're a little goofy, they're a little dorky, they're a little weird, they're a little cool, they're a little whatever it is that we identify with that person. And we can trust people a lot faster than we can trust systems. I mean, the simplest way, that there's many, but I think ultimately it is allowing who you are online to bleed over into your personal life. And I know there's a lot of people that might not quite agree with that, but I'm of the opinion that we are in a day and an age where you cannot hide who you are, what you like, what you're into, what your bad habits are, where you travel, what you do. I mean, unless you decide to just live totally analog, and there's a small percentage of people out there like that. But if you decide to just live like most people, you got an Instagram, you got an Instagram for your millennial friends, you got a Facebook for your mom and your dad and the older people, you've got LinkedIn for your business friends and business professional networking. Our life is now online. So there's a thin line between who we are as professionals and who we are as individuals. And the sooner we accept that and realize that, the less we'll hear these sort of like silly stories from people like, oh, they didn't give me a job because, I had this account and it, had all of this on it and that on it. And, I was shooting rabbits, in a cruel way. And I was doing this and that and all this crazy stuff. And I didn't get a job. Well, yeah, we all live online. We, everything we do is now accessible. So why not, understanding that, use that in a way that just then removes that very thin veil between the owner, founder, CEO, Dennis DM Meador, and, oh, hey, DM, how you doing today? Because it's just a very thin veil anymore. So why not just allow it to be removed and just be who we are and just speak to what we can speak to as founders and leaders in that moment, but still just be naturally who we are. That's the easiest way. Is just remove that veil, that very thin veil that sits between who you are online when you think people aren't paying attention that work with you, and who you are online when you think people or that you work with professionally. The reality is they're one and the same anymore.
Mhm. Speaking of be who you are, you've talked about how like video and podcasting has let people kind of pre-experience what it's like working with DM. What content actually creates that feeling? What should someone talk about or show if they want that trust to form a little faster?
I mean, in the context of being a founder, I think you need to be talking about who you are, what you do, the principles that your company stands behind. Some people, all things being the same. Let's give this example. I'm going to buy a shiny red apple. Now, apple number one comes from Acme XYZ Corporation. And, I know that they're industrial farms. It might be the cheapest, but the reality is that they probably use some pesticides, blah, blah, blah. Apple number two, shiny, red, big, looks nice. Maybe it comes from like a Whole Foods place. It's still a little corporate, but at the end of the day, it's certainly a better choice than this one or Apple number 3. Apple number 3, it's not as big and as shiny as the other one, but Apple number 3 is owned by John Johnson. And John Johnson has 10 acres of apple trees. And John gets up every morning at 5 a.m. and he goes and he removes, all the little insects, and he uses like, maybe some vinegar, nothing that's chemical or anything. And he hand picks every apple and he comes and he sets it down. And John Johnson's apple is $4. This apple is $3. And this apple is 75 cents. Now, all things being equal, money's not necessarily the option. You can afford a $4 apple. You can afford a $3 apple. And obviously, you can afford a 75-cent apple. But for me, I'm most likely to choose John Johnson's apple because I know who John is. John has shown me who he is, what he does, how he does it, why he does it the way that he does. He has a mission behind what he's doing. He has a vision behind what he's doing. He has a heart behind what he's doing. I want that apple, not the semi-corporate, apple from Whole Foods, not the fully corporate apple from Acme Incorporated, but I know John through his social, through his, videos that he does on YouTube walking around, and I want a John Johnson apple. That to me is founder led, corporate soft, fully corporate, and why I think that this really is the biggest opportunity for all of us.
Dennis, it kind of funnels into a follow up perfectly. And it's really about the way we create the content because a lot of the times, like polished content feels a little fake now. So, what's the version of real in air quotes that kind of builds trust without turning into this oversharing or chaotic process?
Well, you asked me two things. One was, how do I tell it, how real is too real? And then you said, how chaotic is too chaotic. So I'll answer the first one, which is how real is too real, or how polished is too polished, right? And I think it depends on your audience, and I think it depends on your message. For example, I work with attorneys. Could I just walk around and, I live in Belize on a little island and just walk around with the palm trees in the back and be like, hey guys, what's up? Yeah, just here today working on some podcasts for you guys. Like, I could do that, but I don't think that message would resonate with who I'm working with. So I have a little 10 by 10 office with the TV screen behind me, lighting, DSLR camera. Why? Because I know that my audience is going to receive my message better when they feel like they can relate to it. So I think the question isn't what is too real or what is too chaotic. The question is, who is your audience and what is the best way they're going to receive the message that you have for them? If my brand was owning an island, or owning a business and living on an island and, just chill vibes, everybody, like, yeah, I could just run around out at Secret Beach. What's up, guys? Drinking my daiquiri today on a Tuesday at 2 while I'm making money. Woohoo. Like, I could be that guy if that was my brand. So that would be chaotic. That wouldn't make sense for my attorneys. So I think the answer is, who is your audience? How are they going to receive your message? How is it going to be not just received, but absorbed? I'm of the very, very, and I've said this, I've been teaching since I was 16 years old in a public capacity. You are not teaching if no one's learning. You are not talking if no one's listening. And you are not sharing if no one's receiving. So those are the things you want to keep in mind when you're building out your content is, who is the person I want watching this and how are they best going to receive it?
Dennis, how does founder led media then kind of set the direction and values and expectations? And how do they do that while also attracting better clients, talent, and opportunities?
I think everyone wants to follow a leader who is willing to step out and be real and be in front of people. I can use the example here, man. Like Mike Leon from CNN is interviewing some weird ass dude in, Belize on an island. Why? Because you've bought into the vision. I have somebody like Carrie. I have somebody like Tracy. I have somebody like Randy, who is one of our main show coordinating executive sales guys. Like I could go up and down Rochelle, I could go up and down the roster of who we've had. And I think I tend to think that one of the biggest reasons that I have been able to punch well above my weight as a company is that people have been able to buy into my vision because they believe me. Why do they believe me? Because they're like, if this guy's fake, this is the weirdest fake I've ever seen. Right? So when we're real, that gives people the chance to actually connect with us and follow us or work with us or feel like, you know what? I mean, one of the best compliments that I get consistently is it's just like, listen, you may be a little plain spoken, but I know exactly where you stand. Who doesn't want to work with somebody that they don't, like I don't like working with people that I find out 3 months later they hated my guts the whole time, or that they were siphoning off from me and ripping me off. I don't like being around those people. So I think that the more real we are, the more vulnerable we are, the more that we are willing to be ourselves in front of our clients, in front of our compatriots, in front of our people that work with us, our teammates. I think the more real that we are willing to be, the better chance we have to make real connections that turn into real business.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. All right, Dennis, it's time for the lightning round. Okay. This is a
Oh no.
true or false questions. Just
Wait, whoa, whoa,
true
whoa.
or
I can't
false.
contextualize. I have to say true or false.
Correct. True or false. All right. Number one, personal branding is just ego marketing.
False.
If you don't feel confident on camera, you should wait until you do.
False.
Being polished builds more trust than being human.
False.
Founder-led media is mainly for getting customers.
Ooh. False.
Mm-mm-mm.
That's frou.
Okay. Mark it down for Fru. And in an AI heavy world, real, and I'm using air quotes, will matter more than ever.
Absolutely true.
Dennis, this was great as always. Thank you for breaking it down in a way that people can actually use. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for coming on with me, buddy.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode in this Authority Matters series. Deeper breakdowns, templates, monthly reports. We put it together on these topics. Join our email list. The link is in the description. And if you want hands-on help building a podcast and distribution system around your message, you can download our free reports or apply to work with the Legal Podcast Network. We're going to put all the links in the description. I'm Mike Leon. Thanks again for watching and listening. See you next time.